Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today, we're going to be going over my top 10 favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online right now. So these are just my favorite cars right now. I've already got a video going over my top 10 favorite vehicles. However, that list is kind of getting outdated now, so you can expect one of those videos coming in the near future. But in this video, I just want to focus specifically on cars that I've been driving a lot in Grand Theft Auto Online and that I am enjoying. So anyway guys, we're going to go ahead and start off with number 10. To start off the list, we have the Albany VSTR coming in at about $1.6 million. Now, I've had this car for a long time. It is one of my favorite vehicles of all time in Grand Theft Auto Online, but also right now. I have been finding myself driving this thing quite a bit, and the reason I really like this car is, first of all, it's a four-door. Second of all, it looks extremely realistic to its real life counterpart, which is of course the Cadillac CTS-V from a few years ago, probably like the 2016, maybe 2017 model. Now, I think it looks extremely close to that car. People also say that this thing is a Mercedes. I don't see that anywhere but the headlights, but I mean, you're free to think what you want, I guess. The VSTR is super fun to drive. Like I said, it is a four-door, so you can have 4 players in this thing at one time. It also is pretty quick in a straight line for being a four-door vehicle. It's not the fastest, that belongs to the jugular, of course, but it is one of the fastest four-door vehicles in the entire game. It's got really good acceleration and it's got really nice handling as well. The top speed is a little bit on the weaker side, but it doesn't really matter because you're almost never going your top speed anyways. But the real thing that I like about the VSTR is what you guys are seeing on the screen right now. This thing can be double clutched. I know that's not actually what it is, but basically you can like spam the handbrake sort of, and you can get like this crazy like boost, and the car is like really slippery and stuff like that. It's really fun to drive this car. And of course, now with the addition of having low grip tires available on every single car in Grand Theft Auto Online, I've still got to go and try it, but with the VSTR, I have a feeling drifting is going to be an absolute blast with this thing for sure. So anyway guys, that's it for car number 10 on my list. It is of course the Albany VSTR. This thing is an absolute monster. If you've never driven a VSTR before, I highly recommend giving it a shot. Definitely one of the best four-door vehicles in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. So let's move on to number 9. Next up on the list, we have the Lampadaddy Furore GT. Now this thing is actually on sale this week. It normally goes for like $450,000, but this week I do think that it's on sale for like $280,000. So a pretty good discount, and for that price, you do get a pretty cool car. Now this thing is not the fastest, but it is a very unique vehicle, I feel like. Unfortunately, there are no customization options for it. However, the car itself, I think, does look really good. So I don't really think it's necessary for it to have a ton of customization that can be done to it. It would be nice, don't get me wrong. I'd love to see this thing get the treatment that some of the other older cars have gotten from Rockstar recently. I think the Furore with some customization would be pretty crazy looking. Now, this thing, the acceleration, pretty good. The handling, also pretty good. It sounds really good as well. The top speed is pretty piss weak, and it is in the sports category. Now, it is of course a two-door, so you can only see 2 players inside of it, but it's just such a cool car, and I feel like it's so underrated. I've loved this thing ever since it came out. I remember buying one as soon as I saw it because I just liked the overall shape of the car, and ever since then, I've always had one. The Furore truly is a really underrated car in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I definitely would recommend checking this thing out, especially this week while this thing is on sale. It doesn't have any super notable features, but it just is a really cool car, and I definitely just recommend giving it a shot. If you don't like it, you can always sell it. So that's it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Benefactor Schwarzer. Now, the Benefactor Schwarzer, if you didn't know, has got some new customization options recently, which have really improved this car's overall look, and it's just kind of drivability because it just looks so much better, and you can actually have some customization that's pretty unique on it now, so it's really nice to see. Now, obviously, this is a super recent addition to my list, and I wanted to include it because I feel like this is just such a huge change for the Schwarzer. Unfortunately, it's still very slow. I'd love to see this thing get an HSW upgrade one day. That would be super tight. Considering the Sentinel's already got one, I'd love to see the Schwarzer get a little bit faster, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that. Now the Schwarzer is of course $80,000, so that does mean that you can steal this thing right off of the street in Grand Theft Auto Online. You don't actually have to buy it on the website. They are pretty common, so I definitely say just try to steal one if you're interested in getting one. Unfortunately, the performance, because of course it is an off-the-street car, is going to be a little bit less than you would hope for. The acceleration is okay. It actually has a pretty respectable top speed considering what it is. The top speed though, I mean, it's gonna be a long time to hit it. What just happened, by the way, as well? What? With the top speed, it's gonna take you a pretty sizable amount of time to actually get to it because the acceleration is not the best. But it's okay, you know, it's more of a car that you take to maybe car meets and stuff like that. Maybe not one that you're gonna go and race with because you will definitely lose, unfortunately. Now with that being said, it does have nice handling. The car does feel really heavy though, which is kind of a big complaint from me about the Schwarzer. I mean, it is based off of a Mercedes C63 in real life, which is not exactly a super light car, but it's definitely, I feel like it definitely doesn't feel as heavy as it does in GTA. So overall, the Schwarzer for $80,000, you can't go wrong with this thing. I definitely say give this thing a shot, especially if you can get one off the street for free. It's going to be super worth your time. It's an awesome car. Lots of new customization. It had some customization before, so there's just, you know, a decent amount now, I would say. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the Benefactor Schwarzer at number 8. Let's move on to number 7. At number 7, we have the Ocelot Locust. Now this is a car that I bought and customized not that long ago in Grand Theft Auto Online, and it has made quite the impression on me. I had never really considered this car at all before. However, since I bought it, I have been super impressed. The Ocelot Locust is $1.6 million, so it is on the expensive side. However, the car that you get for that price is super good. This thing goes for roughly the same amount as the Albany VSTR, so for a lot of people, the choice between the Locust and the VSTR is kind of a typical one. Now the Locust is a two-door, of course, and it is extremely light, so that does mean that this thing has really good handling and super good grip in the corners. This is the reason that I like the Ocelot Locust a lot. I like handling the most on a car over acceleration and top speed. I think that handling is the most important feature, and for me, the Ocelot Locust just ticks that box really nicely. The Locust, because it is so light, just flies through the corners. It has so much grip, so much downforce. It's really hard to get this thing to actually spin out. As you guys can see by the gameplay in the background here, I can just keep this thing on the road no matter what. I can be going through corners super fast, and it doesn't lose traction at all. It's an awesome car handling wise, and for that reason, it's on my list. I do absolutely love this thing. Of course, as I'm talking about the handling, in typical fashion, I do of course crash. But trust me when I say, the Ocelot Locust handling is absolutely fantastic, and it's definitely a car that I feel like is super underrated and that everybody should check out, especially if you're into good handling cars. It's got lots of customization as well, maybe not as much as it could have, but definitely a decent amount, I would say for sure. The acceleration is still good on this car. It doesn't compromise to be exclusively good at handling and nothing else. The acceleration, you know, it's decent. The top speed is a little bit lighter because it is effectively a go-kart, but you know, it's a pretty fast go-kart at that. So we'll just say that. So that's it for number 7. Let's move on to number 6. Next up, we have the Pegassi Torero XO coming in at $2.9 million. So this is, I think, the most expensive car on this entire list. Actually, no, it's the second most expensive car on this entire list. So the Torero XO, this was just added with the Criminal Enterprises DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. Unfortunately, it does have a very broken feature, which is of course the spoiler on this car does not actually function. It does not actually give any sort of downforce, no matter if you leave the active aero rear spoiler or if you have on any other spoiler that you can add additionally. It does not affect the car. It does not have any bonus downforce from any of its spoiler options, which is really unfortunate. Now this is one of the fastest supercars in the entire game. It is just outside of the top 10 if you are on the current gen consoles. However, if you are on the last gen consoles or PC, of course, this is somewhere within the top 10 fastest supercars in the entire game. The Torero has insanely good acceleration. Despite its downforce, it has really good handling as well. Could be better, obviously, if they did fix the downforce issue, but they haven't yet, so we'll have to see on that. And of course, the top speed is also pretty damn good. From what I've heard, this thing actually does rival some of the non-HSW variants of HSW cars. So for example, the Pegassi Ignis weaponized I have heard that this thing is just as fast, if not faster than it, without the HSW upgrade, which is pretty crazy because that is a really fast car. And of course we have this thing on last gen consoles and PC. So that is pretty cool. It's a great car, lots and lots of customization options, some really unique customization options as well, albeit because it does have this forged carbon fiber all over it that you can add onto it, which is a pretty much a new feature for just this car. A few of the other cars from the update also have it, but the Torero is pretty much in a league of its own. I've been driving this thing a lot since the DLC came out, and I can honestly say it's definitely one of my favorite cars from the new DLC. I think it will age better than a lot of the other cars from this DLC as well. So there you have it. That is it for the Pegasi Torero XO, and number 6, it's time to move on to the number 5 car. Next up at number 5, we have the Benefactor LM87. Now this thing is slightly more expensive than the Torero by about 25 grand. This thing goes for $2,915,000, which is really expensive. However, this car is a better supercar than the Pegasi Torero XO. I predicted that this thing might be one of the fastest supercars in the entire game in my initial customization and review on it, and it turns out that I am pretty much right. This is the 4th fastest supercar in Grand Theft Auto Online on last gen consoles and PC. If you are on the new generation consoles and the expanded edition of Grand Theft Auto Online, this thing will rank somewhere around 4th to 6th place because of course the HSW vehicles that do take up the number 1 and 2 slots on those consoles. Of course it is specific to them because they are the only ones that have it. Now the LM87 for $2,915,000. It is a lot of money. However, the performance that you get for that price is really, really damn good. The LM87, I can honestly say, is one of my favorite supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online right now, just because it is a race car, so it's got just a really unique feel to it. It has insanely high downforce. It's also got very good acceleration. The handling is crazy good as well. It's even got a really good top speed, so it's really got the whole package. But something that's really unique about this car is it is of course only a one-seater, which is pretty rare to get in GTA Online these days, especially in the supercars category. Of course, it's also got all the racing liveries and all the racing modifications that you can do to it as well, which make this car really, really unique in my opinion. And honestly, I feel like it is worth the entire $2,900,000 that it does cost. The LM87 truly is one of the best supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online right now, and it's definitely one that I feel like if you don't own it, you are missing out. This thing is just so damn good. Anyway guys, that is it for number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Next up at number 4, we have the Benefactor Sterling GT coming in at just under $1 million. The Sterling GT has also got the same treatment that the Benefactor Schwarzer got, in which it has some new customization features like this ducktail wing on the back that you guys can see. It's also got this livery option that is on the car right now. And all of these options are in addition to the previous customization that it had as well, so we've got quite a good amount of customization on the old Sterling GT these days, which is really awesome. The Sterling GT has always been one of my more favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online, largely to do with the engine sound on this vehicle. If you've never heard of Sterling GT's engine sound, it's absolutely crazy. It sounds awesome. And now, of course, with these extra customization options, you are able to make this car look a little bit more unique, make it your own. And of course, also with the Sterling GT that I cannot show you guys is this thing just got an HSW upgrade as well, making it one of the fastest vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online with that HSW upgrade equipped. So that is super, super dope. Really happy to see the Benefactor Sterling GT finally getting some love in Grand Theft Auto Online. The HSW upgrade is crazy for this thing. From what I've heard, I can't wait to drive it for myself, but that's probably going to take some time, unfortunately. Anyway guys, that is it for the Sterling GT at number 4. It's time to move on to the big 3. So let's get into it. Next up at number 3, we have the Bravado Buffalo STX with Imani Tech, of course. Now this thing goes for $1.6 million. I believe that is if you have the trade price, so you know, it's a pretty reasonable price for the car that you get. This thing is one of my favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys have been around on the channel for a while, you know how much I like the STX and how much I think it is a great car. This is currently the fastest muscle car in the entire game around a circuit. That's not to say top speed wise, that's not to say in a straight line, but around a circuit with corners. meaning this thing has absolutely fantastic handling for a muscle car. It's absolutely great. It is also, of course, a 4-door vehicle, and like I mentioned before, it does have Imani Tech capabilities. So if you don't know what Imani Tech is, basically you can equip this thing with a remote control device so you can remotely control the vehicle, or of course you can equip it with a missile lock-on jammer, which for the past few months has been absolutely a savior when dealing with Oppressor Mark IIs and other vehicles with lock-on missiles, but we all know Mark IIs mostly. On top of that, it's also equipable with armor, as you guys can see on the side of this thing, making it able to take a few more hits from rockets. I believe it takes somewhere between 6 to 9 rockets to actually blow this thing up, which is a pretty reasonable amount, especially with a missile lock-on jammer. They're gonna have a pretty good time trying to hit you with that many shots consistently. It also has machine guns equipped on the front of it. This is another customization option that you can opt for if you so choose. These machine guns do quite a bit of damage, which is nice. I definitely recommend picking this thing up over pretty much any other car that I've talked about on this list so far. Anyway guys, that's it for number 3, and that is it for the Bravado Buffalo STX. Let's move on to the number 2 vehicle. Next up, we have the Grotti Italy GTO coming in at $1.9 million. The Italy GTO is my favorite sports car in Grand Theft Auto Online. For racing, that is. That's not to say it's my favorite sports car overall, but for racing, which is something that I do quite often in GTA, the Italy GTO is pretty much unmatched within the sports category. Now, that's not to say that I don't like it in free mode. I definitely do like it in free mode. I actually have 2 of these things, one for racing and one for just free mode cruising, because I like it so much. The Italy GTO is an insanely fast race car, and it's insanely fast on the streets as well. It does have this little weird buff that gives it an extra speed boost when it goes over bumps in GTA Online. So if there's bumps on a racetrack, you can gain speed through them with this car. Same with out in free mode, of course. So it is a pretty crazy feature to have. Now, the Italy GTO, a lot of people don't like it because it is a little bit inconsistent to drive, especially when you get this thing up in the air. When it does start bouncing, it is a little bit hard to control because, well, there's nothing touching the road, so obviously you don't get much traction. Now, it also has a really good customization, really good acceleration, and a pretty respectable top speed as well. The Italy GTO is definitely more handling and acceleration focused than top speed focused, which is what matters on a lot of the twistier race circuits in GTA Online. This car is absolutely awesome. It's got so much customization that you can do to it as well, making it able to be a little bit more unique as well, so that's a nice feature. Overall, the Italy GTO is definitely a car that I feel like everybody should own in Grand Theft Auto Online. It is just so consistent, and it is just so good. That's pretty much it for the Grotti Italy GTO and number 2, guys. It's time to move on to my number 1 favorite car in Grand Theft Auto Online. At number 1, we of course have the Truffade Adder. This guy trying to fight me? So if you didn't know, the Adder is my favorite car in Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing is an absolute unit. And I want people to know that I don't just like this car because, oh, it's a Bugatti and Bugattis are fast or anything like that. I like this thing because of a lot of different factors, and the main one is I really like how this thing drives. I like how it sounds. It's just a great car. And I'm not going to try to convince you guys that the Adder is the greatest thing ever. It's not. It doesn't have any downforce modifications. It doesn't have any spoiler mods, so you can't get any good downforce out of this car, making it a little bit harder to use in racing conditions usually. I'd love to see Rockstar go ahead and add some more customization options to the Adder. I think that would be super sweet to see, because I know there are a couple other people that really like the Adder in GTA Online as well. And I feel like this car is one that is deserving of getting some more customization. I know there's a lot, but the Adder I feel like is definitely deserving. The Adder is of course all-wheel drive. It has very good acceleration. I think that the acceleration on the Adder is arguably some of the quickest acceleration in the game. I know there's cars that will beat this thing, all of that stuff, but I feel like this car is just so damn fast in a straight line. The top speed is also relatively respectable. It's about 126 miles per hour if I do remember correctly. Now, its handling is definitely its weakest feature. However, its handling is not that bad either. It is pretty consistent when you're going through corners and stuff like that. It does tend to have a bit of an oversteer bias, but that's not to say that's bad. I definitely prefer oversteer over understeer. Unfortunately, the Adder not only does it not have any customization options for the spoiler, it just has no customization options, period. So super unfortunate. The Adder could be a lot better if it just had some customization, but it has absolutely nothing. Of course, at one point, this was the most expensive car in Grand Theft Auto Online, coming in at $1 million flat, which is a pretty fair price considering how good this car actually is. But back in the day, when the game first came out, a lot of people did not have the adder because it was just so expensive, and there weren't that many ways to make a lot of money. The adder is definitely a special car to me. I've had one of these for so many years in GTA Online now. I remember buying my first adder. It was a pretty surreal experience, you know, grinding up all that money and everything like that. It did take some consistency, in fairness to myself, but you know, now that I've got the adder and I've got, you know, all these other cars, you know, it doesn't seem that hard anymore. But I remember getting the adder was a pretty big feat in itself back in the day. Anyway guys, there you have it. That has been my top 10 favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online right now. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you want to see more like this, but maybe for SUVs or trucks or whatever it may be, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, if not dislike, subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.